welcome to our Project Access podcast. Today's podcast is titled No Such Thing as Autistic Behaviors and High Functioning is Not Helpful. So a couple things I really wanted to have a chance to share with you. Number one, this idea of autistic behaviors. To begin with, we've all seen this, right? What is that? An autistic behavior? Right? I'm flapping my hands because I have autism? I would say no. What is this? Or how about if I sit and I cross and swing my leg and my husband has to remind me, Shannon, stop. What are those? Human behaviors, right? Why do I do that? Why do I pick? Why do I swing my leg? There could be lots of reasons. Maybe I'm feeling a little dysregulated. Maybe I'm nervous. Maybe I'm just trying to increase my arousal level because I'm tired and I'm trying to stay awake. Who knows? But really, guys, this, same thing. The difference is it's done in an unconventional way. You're used to seeing people do this. You're used to seeing people do this. This, we're not as used to seeing. But you know what? It's still a human behavior, just like the rest of them. It's just done in an unconventional way. Dr. Barry Prezant, he is one of the beginners of the CERTS model, CERTS standing for Social Communication, Emotional Regulation, and Transactional Supports. He's written a new book titled Uniquely Human. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I promise I'm not getting kickbacks from this. I just think it's a great book. In that story, Dr. Prezant spends a lot of time consulting in public schools. And he was trying to decide, what is it about the teachers in the public schools that seem to work really well with our kids and the ones that don't seem to work really well with our kids? Now, first of all, special educators are all highly trained in working with individuals with special needs. Speech-language pathologists, highly trained in working with individuals with special needs. So for him to really decide, are there specific it factors, that he calls them, he looked at paraprofessionals, right? Paraprofessionals, for the most part, haven't had a lot of specific training in working with children with autism. So why was it that some did so much better with our students, while others not so well? 7 things he identified. 7 things. So, here we go, on your handy-dandy little handout. 7 things. I wish I could ask you to give me some guesses, but I'll just start telling you what they are. Number 1, empathy. What do I mean by empathy? Someone who's able to walk in somebody else's shoes. We talk a lot about this idea of perspective taking being hard for our children with autism. You know what? Sometimes we're not that much better at it. We have to be able to take in and consider what that student's characteristics, what their skills are. What is it that might be enabling them to behave this way or making it hard for them to behave in a certain way, right? Empathy. You don't take extra training or schooling to learn empathy. It's just a character trait that some of these individuals had. Number 2 then, the human factor. What I was just pointing out. Believing, guys, that there's no such thing as autistic behaviors. They are all human behaviors. Some of them done in unconventional ways, but human nonetheless. We're not talking about some alien creature. We're talking about children and adults with an autism spectrum disorder or autism eligibility through our school-based services that are just as human as you and me. So the human factor, that was number 2. Number 3 then, sensitivity. I'll ask you, consider in a school setting on November 1st, the day after Halloween, what is our expectation for students in class that day? Is that the day that we have big tests, right? Big reports due, right? Important homework assignments that we have to complete? No, it's the day after Halloween. We are sensitive to those kids coming to see us that day that have been up all night on sugar, right? So we're going to shift our expectations and plan accordingly. Same thing for our children with autism, guys. We don't always know what it is that sent them to us the way that they came that given day, but typically you can be sensitive and notice that Joey's doing more of this today. Joey's doing more of this today, right? Maybe just a little more dysregulated, So I need to shift my expectations because I am sensitive to his arousal state or his readiness to learn on that day. Number 4, shared control. By the way, these 7 items that I'm listing are all available in Chapter 7, which is very convenient, in the book that I referred to, Uniquely Human by Dr. Barry Prezant. Okay, so number 4, shared control. Okay, so what is it called when someone else makes all your decisions for you? You're not allowed to do anything without permission, and they tell you when to eat, when to sleep, where to stay, what to do. What's that called? Jail, right? That's what it is in jail. Okay, do we want to set up our environments for our kids to be jail? Who wants to go to jail? No one, right? Shared control, guys. It is so important to give them some sense of control of themselves and their environment. How do we do that? We provide choices. We have them help us build their schedule so they know what they're doing in a day. We give them an option. Instead of being so strict that they have to sit in their chair and do all of their studying perfectly still, we allow them to stand at the table and do their work, right? We have to think about, is our goal to get the work done or is our goal to make them sit still? Shared control. That's number 4. Number 5, humor. I've been working with individuals with autism for, let's say, 25 years. And in that period of time, sure enough, I get frustrated with some behaviors. But you know what? I cannot be effective for them if I am not self-regulated myself. What do we do to regulate ourselves? What happens in movies when it gets too intense? Humor, right? They throw in a little joke, a little comic interlude, right? Smiling helps us all, guys. Just a smile, just a laugh. There's research out there about how laughing can improve your mood. It can heal, yeah? Humor, that's number 5. Number 6, trust. We have to have trust with our students. I'm a speech-language pathologist by training, and in my background, I always, my first session with any individual, any class, whatever, I didn't have a list of things I expected us to accomplish based on my goals that day. You know what I had to expect to accomplish that day? Establish a routine and a rapport. I need the student to trust me in order to be willing to do the things that I ask them to do, okay? It's okay to take some time up front. You have to have a relationship with someone to learn from them. And you don't have relationships with people if you don't trust them, right? What happens if you have a really poor, distrustful relationship with your spouse? Divorce? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't last long that way, does it, guys? We don't want to interact with one another if we don't trust one another. We also have to go back and think about, those Maslow's hierarchy. Number 1, before we're ready to learn or do anything, is feeling safe in our environment. I don't feel safe if I don't trust either A, what's happening in the routine, or you, the person that's supposed to be my guide, right? So trust, number 6. And finally, number 7, flexibility. Guys, we know some days our students are performing here, some days our students are performing here, some days it may do this throughout the day, right? We have to be flexible in order to make it a successful day, because the bottom line is everyone needs to be successful. Everyone needs to have a good time, and everyone needs to learn from one another. We do have things we can learn from our students as well. So flexibility. Again, that's one of those things that we target with our students to try to teach them some flexibility within their schedules. But really, we also need to consider the flexibility that we are providing. So those are the 7 IT factors according to Dr. Barry Prezant, and things that I hope each and every one of you can take into consideration in the way that you're thinking and the way that you're approaching working with children in any of the strategies that you choose to use. Those 7 IT factors. Another thing I wanted to bring up on your handout is Dr. Peter Gerhardt. So Dr. Peter Gerhardt is doing more research with our older individuals with autism, adolescents and adults, which, by the way, there is not much research out there yet in those areas. When I started, remember I mentioned 25 years ago, the prevalence of autism was 1 in 10,000. Now we're at 1 in 68. That's a bunch of kids being identified. What happens to those kids as they get older? They become adolescents and adults, right? We're getting ready to have a big workforce of individuals that have autism. And it would be really nice if we could have some really effective ways for them to find positions. You know how we do that? By teaching them independence. So back to Dr. Peter Gerhardt. What he suggests is that everything aside from academic skills is an adaptive behavior. Let's think about it. If we go to our OTs, we're used to this idea of adaptive behavior being, zips and buttons and washing your hands and toileting skills, right? But really, having a conversation with someone, I'm constantly adapting my communication with you, right, for the context. Depending on what environment I'm in, I'm adapting my tone of voice, I'm adapting my volume. Everything aside from the purely academic skills, he considers adaptive behaviors. So, Dr. Gerhardt has 5 necessary things to be successful in teaching those adaptive behaviors. Number 1, we need to consider the context. So, any given skill that we're wanting to teach or to work on, we need to think about it within its context. And as much as possible, try to teach that within the context. Right, guys, we know that our students with autism have a hard time generalizing. So it doesn't make sense for us to try to do something in a very contrived, separate environment and expect them then to be able to perform that in the right context. So context, number 1, we need to consider that, where and when and with whom things take place. Number 2, intensity. So Dr. Gerhardt's example is, if you want to teach a child to independently pay for his meal, right? So we go on these field trips and we go to McDonald's and we have them order their lunch and they pay for their lunch themselves. Great. Okay, what do we know about learning for individuals with autism? And let's also say individuals with intellectual disabilities. It takes multiple repetitions, right? A pretty high intensity of repetitions. So from this speculation that maybe a 5-year-old takes 1,000 repetitions to really get something and generalize it, that means we're eating at McDonald's for 15 years every week in order to teach the skill of independently paying for his meal without supports and prompts. Okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. None of us are writing 15-year-long IEP goals, right? 1 year. So we need to consider the intensity that we have available to work on a specific skill. Maybe we need to set it up so that we can order things intensely, repeatedly throughout the day in our own classroom as a role play kind of opportunity. Number 3, efficiency. We have to think about how much does it take to get what they need or want. So we at Project Access talk a lot about behaviors are messages, right? And the importance of understanding the message behind a behavior. And if we have a behavior that we don't like, then we need to replace it with another behavior that works better. It has to work better, but it also has to be easier or as easy and effective as the original behavior that they were using. Okay? That's efficiency. We need to pick things that are going to be easy because we've provided the necessary supports for them to be successful. Okay. Number 4, transfer of control. Remember how Dr. Prezant talked about shared control? If we're trying to teach independence in all of these adaptive skills, we have to have a plan in place for, we're providing lots of controls and prompts and supports initially. How are we going to transfer that so that they can eventually do it independently without any of our prompts and supports? Or maybe with a visual prompt of their own that they know how to use, that we aren't verbally reminding them, or their own cue card that they can pull out, as long as they know when and where to pull it out, right? So we have to build in this idea of transfer of control. That's number 4 for being successful in building our adaptive skills. And then number 5, value. It needs to be something that is valuable for some reason for that child, right? So let's take, for example, you know what? I think all of you that are watching, I've heard that you are just doing a fabulous job in your positions. I think you are doing so well that I don't think you need the reinforcers anymore. So I also heard that some of you like flowers. So how about if I start paying you in flowers, because I know you like that, because you don't need this highest reinforcement of being paid anymore. How many of you are going to work tomorrow if nobody's going to pay you anymore except in flowers, right? There's no value in that. So we have to make sure that either the value is intrinsic, that they have their own want and desire. What do we know about individuals with autism? They oftentimes have these very highly preferred activities. How about instead of trying to remove that from them, we use that as the way to build in intrinsically their own motivation, their value for why they want to accomplish and learn the skills that we're trying to teach them. Okay, so far I've really hit this idea of no such thing as autistic behaviors, right? These are human behaviors. I've hit this idea of adaptive behaviors from Dr. Gerhardt and teaching independence. But I also said we're going to talk about high functioning is not helpful. Dr. Gerhardt also subscribes to this notion. High functioning is not helpful. In my 25 years of seeing individuals with autism, I have yet to see one that performed consistently in all of their skills and all of their daily living tasks at the same level. They may do this really well, right? Like read or decode or organize and sort things, but they may do this over here not so well, like social conversations and reciprocity, right? They're not performing all at one level, so it really doesn't make sense for us to describe them all at one level. While academically, a student may perform at his grade level or her grade level, right? That would be academically able. We like to call them high functioning. But then when that same individual has a meltdown in the hallway, and you see this 16-year-old having a meltdown totally out of control in the hallway, or throwing a chair or a desk, that's able to do high-level chemistry, but he's high functioning, then the way we think about it shifts. Now we start looking at that as, well, he should be able to, he's high functioning, he knows how to do that. And we forget to problem solve that we need to teach them how to regulate in those situations. So calling someone high functioning tends to be a disservice, because then we assume they're high functioning across everything when they're not. Same thing with low functioning. If we call an individual low functioning, where do we set the bar? What's our expectation for that individual? And do you know what those individuals will achieve? Exactly what we expect of them. And if this is all we ever expect, then we're really doing them a disservice when really they could do so much more. So maybe an alternative to high functioning or low functioning is, if we understand the characteristics of autism, we can either identify them based on the severity of characteristics of autism. That gets pretty wordy though. Or we can start thinking and identifying in terms of their language level, maybe. And just mention nonverbal, low verbal. That doesn't mean that they're not also highly skilled in some specific areas. Or we can call them a conversational partner. Maybe they do have some of that back and forth and they're able to converse with us. Or maybe they're just a social partner and they're able to point and do some of the social communicative types of things. So think more about that, or think about describing them based on specific skills. But let's try not to set our students up to fail by calling them either low functioning or high functioning, because that's a little confusing for everyone. All right, that's it for today. Watch for future podcasts, and good luck to you all.